Today, Matthew chapter 6, we're going to bounce a little bit, just a little bit. Normally, I like to plant in one specific spot, camp out there, read in context. You get into some bad situations when you cherry pick verses. But today, we're going to bounce just a little bit because there are multiple stories that cover this topic. And it's something that I promised myself I would never talk on. But now that we don't have any, I'm going to bring it up. Tithing. I'm just playing. Tithing, we're going to talk about it, but it's not because we don't have any. It's actually because we left the children in here last week. Purely accidental on your part. It's okay, we overcompensated today. The kids were in here last week when we took up the collection, and I was working with Michael Anthony. We were putting in the pump, and he said, Jake looked at him and said, Daddy, why are y'all passing around that basket? And he said, well, son, we put money in there. And he's like, why? And he said, well, for the church. Well, can we take money out? No. I'm going to say that again. No, you cannot take money out of the basket. But he said, it bothered me that my son who grew up in church had no idea that this even went on. It was like this revelation to him that after they leave, we pass this basket. And he's like, wait a minute. We're missing out on something here. So it's important to talk about this. We've also had folks near our age that when we approached on this subject, they said, what are you talking about? So I don't want to come at this. Please don't come at this like I want to gouge you for money. Your giving is your business. But I want to present it in a biblical way. I want to talk about what it is and what it means. Matthew chapter 6, verse 1. This applies to so much more than giving money. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness. I love that they put that in quotations. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Let's read that one more time. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before other men to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. Now, does that mean you cannot do stuff in front of other people? No. You're going to serve alongside of each other. The church is going to serve alongside of each other. Right? We're going to go feed homeless people together, hopefully, at some point in this thing. There's nothing wrong with us coming back and as a church talking about what God is doing in that homeless ministry. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with showing pictures, I don't think, on a screen and saying, look, church, this is where your money is going. This is where your time and your fruit and your effort is going. I don't think we're not bragging about that. But when you pull up to serve the homeless in your van and you roll down the windows as you get there and you go, we're here! Now you're borderline. If everything you do in the church comes with a price tag, watch that. Be very careful. Well, I bought this for the church. Only cost me $37.99, by the way. Don't do that. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. There's some concerning things there. The first concerning thing is when. That word when, not if you give. When you give. It's a command to give. Now this is talking about giving way more than just money. But when you give to the needy, so there's this command, there's this expectation, this understanding that we are going to support needy people. Okay? Now that doesn't just mean the guy standing on the corner up in Arlington who's got the sign and is like, I need your change. It's not just that guy. There are members of this body who are in need. There are members of this body that cannot afford medication that they need to keep going in life. And for those of us who have plenty in the bank to hold on to our wallets and go, so sorry about your cancer, I can't help you. You're going to lose your house. You're going to get evicted. Sorry about your luck. Meanwhile, I go out and feed my family, your family, and everybody's family at lunch. When you give to the needy, don't announce it. Do nothing to bring attention to yourself. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, don't let your left know what your right is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. That's the other thing that should worry you about this. It worries me a little bit. God sees everything that I do in secret. Not only the things that I decide to announce, right? Because you're never going to see the bad things. I'm never going to come up to you and go, hey, Brian, guess what I did today? Guess how bad I failed. Well, you may hear that from me. But you're not going to announce your bad things, right? Nobody likes to see you. Facebook, your lives are awesome on Facebook, right? If people just looked at your Facebook life, get on somebody's Facebook sometime and just kind of go through their photos. I know that's stalking, I know, whatever. But go through their pictures, go through their posts, and you're like, man, these people are vacationing. They're doing all kinds of things. They're always happy. They're always smiling. We had some friends that she said, look, they're at Disney. And look, they're here. And they're always going to these places. And they always have these nice things and all this stuff. And as we're flipping through, I told Tasha, I said, what's the one thing that you don't see in those pictures? She said, I don't know what. And I said, you never see their husband. There's tons of pictures of her and the kids and her and the parents and her and this, but you never see her husband. Well, then you find out they've been separated. By Facebook, you wouldn't know that. God knows everything that you do in secret, not just what you do in public. So when you write out that check, when you give that money and you put it in that envelope, and you take it to somebody's house and leave it at the doorstep, when you give those things to the church, God sees that. There has been so much generosity between this body that I know about because you come to me and say, give this to so-and-so, but don't tell them who it's from. So then it makes it look like it's coming from me. I get to take people money and I'm like, here, this is from the church. And they're like, thank you. And I'm like, I didn't do this. Well, who did? I can't tell you that. But that's beautiful to me. That's beautiful to God. Don't let your left know what your right is doing. So when you give in secret. Now, that's kind of hard here in church, right? When that little basket's swinging your way, you know, sometimes you take your hand and you put it in there when there's not even anything in your hand just to make it look like you gave something. Or is that just me? Just me? Okay. I don't want to be that guy that just takes the bag and just passes it along, so I'm at least going to do my hand like this and keep it going. It's kind of hard to give in secret sometimes, right? Now let me tell you this, let me assure you this, there are people that go back and count the money here. I don't even know who gives what. I don't want to know. That's not my business. I don't sit at home with a log and go, man, George Slotacek, he needs to pick that mess up. I don't do that. Okay? There are very few people that are privy to that information. But when you give secretly. I know it's hard here. I know sometimes that's difficult. I wrote this down. Flesh craves the adoration and the attention from other men. Giving in secret without prices listed shows maturity, value, and genuineness in your giving. Right? You crave the adoration of men. You pull up in my car, right? You go riding with me, and you pull up in my car. People don't adore you. People don't look at you and go, wow, look at this guy. Right? This is a high pastor here. No, you like, look at this fool. This thing's going to fall apart. When you crave adoration, your giving becomes more known. Well, look what I've got. Look at all my toys. Look at all my stuff. Don't do that. Number 2, 1 Corinthians 16. You should give in secret. 1 Corinthians is going to tell us you should give regularly. 1 Corinthians 16, verse 1 through verse 3. Now about the collection for God's people. This This is Paul writing to the Corinthians. He says, do what I told the Galatian church to do. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money. That's very important. Set aside a sum of money in keeping with his income, saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. Then when I arrive, I'll give letters of introduction to the men you approve and send them with your gift to Jerusalem. If it seems advisable for me to go also, they will accompany me. So Paul says, here's the easiest way to do this as a church. I don't want to be going around banging on people's doors, right? How awesome would that be? Right? If we didn't take up a tithe on Sunday morning, if like throughout the week, one of mine and Trey's jobs was to come here, all right, we're here to collect 10%, let's go, come on. And you're sitting there writing your check, church. We'd probably have more money. Either that or you'd start dodging me. You'd be like, they're coming, shut the garage door, you know. But Paul says, look, to make this easy, let's do it this way. I've told the Galatian church, when you meet, that's another thing. You should be meeting regularly with believers. When you guys meet at the beginning of the week, just take up a collection. Take a part of money in proportion with your income and set it aside. Now notice, and this is going to ruffle some feathers, I know, he never says take your 10%. He never says you sit down with your calculator and figure it up. Paul says, take what you have and take a sum of money in collection with that, or in light of that, and set that aside for giving. And put it all in one basket. And then when I come, we'll take all this money and we'll take it to Jerusalem, where the church will disperse it as needed. It's exactly what we do. We take up a collection. This is why you take up a tithe in church, because Paul commanded it, suggested it to the churches. All right? Give regularly. The word collections here literally means money gathered for relief of the poor. And this is the only time it's ever used in Scripture. So when Paul wrote this, he knew what he was talking about. Paul's not saying, I'm going to come and I'm going to take this money and we're going to divvy it up and we're going to, I'm going to take part and they're going to take part. No. Paul said this money is for a collection. It's to help the poor people. So we're taking it to Jerusalem, and when the apostles get word of any church, of anybody that might need it, we can send it out. All right? 2 Corinthians chapter 8. So you're told to give secretly. You're told to give regularly. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And we're going to read pretty much the entire chapter. But it's great because it's all about generosity. And now, brothers, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. So he's writing to the Corinthians in his second letter, and he talks about the churches in Macedonia. He says, out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own. They urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. So what he's saying, look, Corinthians, there is a church in Macedonia that is going through extreme poverty, that's going through extreme trial, and I want you to take from them because they gave out of what they could. Not only what they could, but they gave above what they could. Why? Because they saw it as a chance to share in the blessings of other people. Let me ask you this. When you put your money in the basket, your check, whatever, as it's going along, are you consciously thinking about the blessing that it's going to be to other people? Is that your purpose? Why do you put money in the basket? Anybody? Why do you put money in the basket? You do it every week. Why do we put money in there?
To serve others.
To serve others? Okay. Who are you serving? Who are we serving? I can tell you this, most of you are thinking it, I'll say it, you serve me. And I appreciate that wholeheartedly. My children are able to eat. I'm able to keep up with things here. You serve Trey. He's able to be here. You serve your kids. They're able to go on trips. You serve your children. You serve your meals on Wednesday nights. You come in and you eat. You serve so many different things. On top of that, some of the things that you haven't seen, you're able to give to people. We've given clothes and jackets to needy people in Fort Worth. That's not a brag. I'm just telling you where your money's gone. You have helped people stay in their homes. You have helped people stay with their cars, stay with their vehicles. We've helped people whose houses have burnt down. You may not know these things offhand, but your money is not going to crazy things. Okay? Here's what he says. Out of the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. See, it's a horrible thing to be poor, right? Some of you can attest. Teachers, hear me out. It's a horrible thing to be poor. It's terrible. It's a wonderful thing to be joyful. How are you joyful when you're poor? How does that work? Some of you are like, I've been poor for so long, I don't have a choice. I just got to smile and keep going. Some of you say, I don't know, I've never been poor. Some of you say, I don't know, I've never been joyful. Here's the deal. Out of the most severe trial, their joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and beyond their ability, entirely on their own. They pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. I can see Paul now going, you guys don't have to give. Guys, y'all need to take care of yourself. No, because I'm not leaving behind the blessing of helping other people. I may be in debt, but I guarantee you there is something that I can give in proportion with my income. I may have student loans, I may have car loans, I may have house loans, I may have all these different things, and I may only get $12 out of my paycheck. I'm giving $1. I'm doing something because I want to contribute to the salvation of others. Now listen to me very carefully. This applies to me, this church, any church. If you're giving and you're not seeing fruit from your giving, leave. Leave. I know this is your church. I know you've been here since Mama and Papa were here. If you don't see fruit from your giving, leave. And that's not a threatening leave. That is if you ever see me misappropriating funds, if you ever see me or anybody in this church using money for anything that's not glorifying God's kingdom, number one, call that to my attention. Rebuke me. Number two, don't stay here. Please do not feed something that is not honoring Christ. Ever. Keep reading. And they did not do as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us in keeping with God's will. So we urged Titus, since he had earlier made a beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. But just as you excel in everything else, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness in your love for us, see also that you excel in your grace of giving. I'm not commanding you. That's very important. Verse 8, I'm not commanding you. But I want to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it with the earnestness of others. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though He was rich, yet for your sakes, for our sakes, He became poor, so that you through His poverty might become rich. And here's my advice about what is best for you in this matter. Last year you were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. Now finish the work, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion according to your means. For if willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I'm going to read that again. If willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what he does not have. What is he saying here? He's remembering Christ talking about the widow who comes in and lays that little bit that she has in the offering plate. As the Pharisees, who are given so much, scoff at her and say, look at what she's brought in. She hasn't brought in anything. But it's all I have. Some of these older ladies who are on Social Security, for me to gouge them and say, I need more of your money. And they're the ones that will feel so heartbroken. I'm really actually kind of glad Miss Wilma's not here today, because Miss Wilma would come up afterwards and try to write me a check. You know she would. She'd be like, it's everything I got in the bank, take it. I don't want to gouge you. If you're on Social Security, if you're on fixed income, I'm not saying you need to give more money. That's when you leave. What I'm saying is, I want it to be out of willingness. I want there to be a willingness in our heart. Not only on Sunday morning, but if something comes up and, hey, we have a brother in need, we're willing to give. It's not out of compulsion. It's not out of this obligatory, I've got to give this money. I really want to keep my money. If you want to keep your money, keep it. Keep it, because you're not doing God any favors giving it that way. When you give willingly, it's my desire, it's my joy to give it to people, because Christ gave everything He had for me. Christ left His riches in heaven to be born in that manger and to live in poverty, to wash men's feet, so that we could become rich. Our desire is not that others might be relieved while you are hard pressed. He's talking about this. Don't give yourself into debt so that other people can live in mansions. But that there might be equality. There's a lot of pastors need to read that verse. If your pastor is living in a house that has a bunch of zeros tacked on the end of it, worry about that. Well, I'm giving everything I have to the church. Meanwhile, my pastor pulls up in a Bentley. There's a problem. Our desire is not that others would be relieved while you are hard-pressed, but that there would be equality. At the present time, your plenty will supply what they need, so that in turn, their plenty will supply what you need. Then there will be equality. As it's written, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. And I thank God who put into the heart of Titus the same concern I have for you. He not only welcomed our appeal, but he's coming to you with much enthusiasm and on his own initiative. And Paul says, look, this is the point of it. Maybe the Sinclairs right now, maybe they're in a land of plenty. Yeah. And they're able to supply for somebody else. But there may be a day, God forbid, where Tony loses his job and they're no longer in the land of plenty. Then it's our turn, out of the eagerness of our heart, to supply for them. Our goal is to never see anybody suffer. Our goal is to never see anybody in want. And by our giving, we supply that. Now you say, what about 10%? What about the 10%? Anybody know where that comes from? That you give 10% of your money?
The word tithe.
The word tithe, okay. But where does it come from? What's that?
It comes in Genesis whenever Abraham is involved with the wars with other people.
Okay.
And he contributes 10%, I believe is the first mention of the tithe.
Perfect. Abraham is in war with other people, and there's a king. There's a king Melchizedek who comes, and Abraham gives him a tenth. Now, why a tenth? Just out of compulsion? Just why not an 11th or a 20th? I'm just going to give you this tenth. Abraham gave him a tenth. It was just an honorary thing. I'm going to keep 90, and I'm going to give you 10. Listen, that's not a good deal. If you grew up with brothers and sisters, right? And there's one cookie left, and mom says, y'all share that cookie. Okay, here's the deal. I get 90%, you get 10%. No child looks at that and goes, deal. I'm so hungry, deal. Nobody looks at that, right? You get one Coke between the two of you. I'm going to drink 90 and you're going to drink 10. I get all this, you get this. Good deal. But mine's on the bottom. I want my 10 first. You'll catch that later. Nobody would look at God and say, okay, God, creator of heaven and earth, the omniscient, the omnipotent, the almighty, the one who deserves everything that I have, I'm going to keep 90 and I'm going to give you 10. See how arrogant that kind of sounds? I'm going to keep all this for me and I'm going to give you this. That's exactly what Abraham did to Melchizedek. Melchizedek comes out and he blesses Abraham, and Abraham says, fine, I'm going to give you this. And Melchizedek takes it as a blessing. The Levites took the 10% as a blessing. The church takes your 10% as a blessing. You don't have to give anything. And I'm very well aware of that. Next week, you could all go, forget this, and nobody give anything. And guess what? The week after, it's going to be cold in here. Well, I don't know. It's Texas. It may be warm in here. But there's this 10% rule, and you've been taught, a lot of us have been taught for so long that we have to give 10%. That it's mandatory, that God's not going to love you if you don't hit that 10% mark, down to the penny. I'm going to tell you this, 10% may be a great starting place, but you don't live under the old law. Jesus, in multiple places, took the old law, took the Mosaic law, and expounded on it. To expound on it means the Mosaic law said if you kill somebody, you're a sinner. Jesus said if you hate somebody, you've killed them. It's the same thing. The Mosaic law said if you cheat on your spouse, you're a sinner. Jesus said if you lust after somebody, He made it, He stretched it. The Mosaic law said you give us your 10%. Jesus says, I'm not worried about your 10. I want you to give out of the willingness of your heart. Maybe the willingness of your heart today was to give 50%. God bless you. Maybe the willingness of your heart today was not to give at all. I'm not giving anything to this church. Then by all means, by compulsion, don't give. Because like I said before, God doesn't want that. I'm not worried about your money. I'm worried about your heart. Your money will not get you into heaven. It's not going to save you. It's not going to break us. The building may get shabby. The church will go on. Christianity will not cease because you didn't give your money. 10% may be a great starting place, but you don't live under that law. You can almost hear Christ say, you've heard it said, give your 10%, but I say to you. When you look at sacrificial giving, the 10%, the question is, does the New Testament carry this over? Does it modify or does it cancel this Old Testament command? Jesus' words, render to Caesar what is Caesar and render to God what is God's, must come into effect. You never look at the IRS, and I love this example. We had a board meeting yesterday. I sit on a board for a nonprofit. Some of you know this, some of you don't. It's Running Free Ranch. We use horses for therapy for veterans with PTSD, kids who are disabled, different things like that. And we're sitting in a board meeting yesterday, and we're like, well, who's writing the checks? Well, I am. And it's a husband and wife who head this thing up. He's writing the checks. And I said, well, who are you writing them to? Well, right now I'm writing them to her. I said, you can't do that. Well, why not? The IRS really doesn't like it when a spouse is writing checks to another spouse. They seem to frown on that. And then he stopped me. He said, we don't have enough for the IRS to even worry about us. And I was like, yeah, okay, good point. But here's what you say. If the IRS comes to audit the church, look at her. She's like, please don't even say it. If the IRS came to audit the church and they said, okay, you owe this much. If they audit you and they say you owe $30,000 in back taxes, you haven't paid up. Are you going to call the IRS agent and go, see, here's the deal. I'm going to give you like $3 $300 and we're going to call this good. And if you've ever met an IRS auditor, they don't laugh. They're like trained to be like, you're not going to get that. You're not going to win that. See, I only got this much. So I'm just going to give you what I can give you, and we're going to call it square, right? Federal, your income taxes are coming due. Some of you get a refund. Some of us don't. You have to pay in $1,000. Well, I got $10. I'll pay in this. Hopefully they take it. Guess what? They're going to take it. They're going to take some other stuff too. We never look at the IRS and say, well, I gave what I thought to be good. We wouldn't or shouldn't do this with our spouse or children. I would never shortchange my children. Why would we have this attitude with our God? I'm able to give, but I don't want to. Some of you say, I'm able to give, but I don't want to give to this church. Great, give to somebody else. Find an avenue, again, where your money can be a blessing, and give. The whole concept of stewardship should abolish the mindset that says 10% of what I own is God's, but the remaining 90% is mine. And I stole this quote. This is not me. But I loved it because of 3 words. The whole concept of stewardship, giving your money, should abolish the mindset that says 10% of what I own is God's, but the remaining 90% is mine. These 3 words, it's all God's. As stewards, we are to wisely invest it for the glory of God and the advancement of His kingdom. It's all God's money. I operate my life on God's money, and I know, and some of you know, some of you who have lost jobs, God can take it away just like that. You live so high, well, this is mine. God goes, no, and He takes it. Only 3 to 5% of Americans who give to their local church, do so through regular tithing. 3 to 5% are regular tithers. In the year 2000, American evangelical churches collectively made $2.66 trillion in income. The church, collectively, around the United States, made $2.66 trillion. You know what I could do with that money? Ooh. Total Christian income in the United States is $5.2 trillion annually, nearly half of the world's total Christian income. 1 trillion to 3 trillion in wealth will change hands every year within the Christian community from family to family. So you guys are giving $1 trillion to each other. It's a lot of money. Now, here's the thing. When surveyed, 17% of Americans state that they regularly tithe. 17%. So here's, for easy math, because I know y'all go to Ennis. Irene, what's 17% of 100? There you go. 17. She's a math teacher. Hey guys, what's 17% of 100? So you only knew that because she said it. What's 17% of 50? We don't know. Yeah, don't hurt yourself. All right. That lets me know that if there's 100 people in this room, there's 100 people, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We end at Walker. So from Walker up are our folks that are tithing. Everybody else doesn't tithe. To put that in perspective of a church. This is interesting. For Christian families making less than $20,000 per year, 8% gave at least their 10% in tithing. So if you make less than $20,000 a year, 8% of those families that make $20,000 or less a year, they tithe. Now, for families making a minimum of $75,000 or more. So if you're $20,000 or less, 8% tithe. $75,000 or more a year, which if you're in that tax bracket, welcome to Anthony Drive. That figure drops to 1%. The more money people make, the less they give away. Now you don't understand that money is one of the roots of all evil. 3 out of 4 people that have never gone to church make donations to nonprofit organizations. The average donation by adult who attend Protestant churches is about $17 a week. So if we break down your tithes, if we take what we make this Sunday and break it down by people, it'll average out to about $17 to $20 a person. And guys, I'm not throwing these statistics at you to shame you. I'm throwing them at you to let you know this. Our children are growing up and they don't even know that we pass a basket. By the time they get to this age, stewardship doesn't even exist. I'm not going to convince you to give away your money. It's not going to happen.
What money?
What money? What time is it? We got time? We got about a couple minutes. There's this thing called a job. Back in the day, people got those. Sorry to shame you, but since you started it, you gave me, I know what next week's sermon will be about. So here's the deal. Your money that comes in, okay, here's the deal. I can't get a job. No. Do you get an allowance? No, we don't do that anymore because there's these things called chores. Here's the deal. Do you get birthday money? Does anybody send you money for your birthday?
I mean, that's like once a year, though.
It is once a year. That's This is why I quit youth ministry. This right here. But here's the deal. Do you tithe off of that money? Do you tithe off of money that comes into you? Your taxes. I'm getting a refund. What are we doing with our refund? We're going to Disney World. Do you tithe off of that? That's my money. Leave my money alone. You get a bonus at work. Do you tithe off of that bonus? You get a raise. Is your first thought, okay, how does this affect my tithing? No. Our children are not seeing us tithe. And by the time they get to teenagers, it's all mine. You want to help this entitled generation? Teach them to give things away. Give it away. That money's not yours. That money can quit coming in at any time. Mama and Papa don't have to give you birthday money. But when you tithe into a Bible-believing church, we are your family. And when your money quits, we should be able to help you. That's what we're here for. But if we're not training our children up to give, if they don't understand that we give money to the church, if they don't understand why we pass the basket, they're not going to understand it. It's kind of like the Lord's Supper. I was excited last week when the kids came in, the last time we did Lord's Supper, when the kids came in, accidentally. But they got to see that, because they're probably thinking, what are they doing with this juice and these crackers? They get to eat. They send us back there and they're in here eating snacks. But they get to see it. This is what we do. This is why we do it. It's important for them to understand so that when they get to this age, they go, I give money. I do this. It's important, on a side note, to set up a savings account for your children. Don't let your children blow all their money. Have an account set up for your kids at a young age. Make them put money into that. You don't get to keep all this. But why? Because I said, Daddy, I'm taking your money and I'm putting it in the bank. And then when they turn 18 and they have that savings account, they go, you know what, Dad? You're a pretty awesome dude. My parents did it with me. I was able to take my wife on a honeymoon after we got married because of money that when I was a child, I was stashing money back. It didn't hurt me. It was a great gift. I'm able to provide for my children now because of that. We have tithed, and I'm not going to tell you, that was Wheel of Fortune. I'm not going to tell you. So we're talking about tithing, and somebody in here is playing games? Listen, if you get on that fan thing where they give you $30,000, I want that money. But here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you there's some mystical mumbo jumbo about it. I've tithed and I've never gone without. We've hit hard times. I've lost jobs. We've hit times where we looked at the bank account and it was like, man, we have to tithe. And this is going to hurt. This is not an easy tithe. I'll tell you this. There has never been a time in our life where God did not supply our needs. Never. And there's nothing crazy and mystical about that. I'm telling you, you want God to bless your money? Bless God with your money. Pray over it. Give what you give. Don't keep records. I mean, keep records, but don't sit there and the church owes me. Don't do that. Give out of compulsion, give out of love, give out of generosity, and I guarantee you, God will take care of you. This church, I told everybody at the beginning when we were setting budgets, we sat here a couple of weeks ago. It's no secret to anybody. If you're a guest, surprise, we were in the red. It's fine. But why were we in the red? Because come Christmas time, we give out a lot of money. We help families. We buy things for people. And now we'll steadily start to see that climb back up because we say, hey, the church is in the red. And we had multiple families that night come up, hey, I want to give. And they gave back. Now the church we're in the black. You can worry about it. You can stress about it. You can sit and crunch numbers and, how are we going to do this? Or you can look at each other and go, we're going to trust God. We're going to step out on faith. And if we're blessing God with what we have, I believe that He'll return it. Not in any tenfold, not that He's going to build some kingdom for us. But God will make sure we stay here. God will make sure we survive. He'll make sure that this building stands, that this church stands, that your family stands, if you're honoring Him with everything that you have.